Phylum Arthropoda. We will talk about trilobites. So trilobites are extinct arthropods, and then we'll move right into different groups. So your Chelicerata, class Merostomata, your horseshoe crabs. There is scorpion spiders or eurypterids, which are extinct. Class Pycnogonida, so your sea spiders. Class Arachnida, which most of us know to include spiders, scorpions, ticks, and mites. And then the myriapods, so centipedes and millipedes. Of course, the centipedes are the more carnivorous ones, millipedes more herbaceous. Crustaceans, so your lobsters, crabs, and then your hexapoda or your insects. Your trilobites in phylum Arthropoda, of course, these are extinct, but were very, very abundant about 450 to 550 million years ago. They were mostly scavengers, had a very hard exoskeleton. And this exoskeleton was separated or segmented into a cephalon and a thorax. They possessed biremus legs, and so biremus legs are, of course, different. Other arthropods have uniremus legs. Trilobites, so remember trilobites, we do have a specimen for lab viewing. Your Chelicerata group, you have, we will talk about 3 classes. The classes are based off of morphology, so with fused segments, 2 tagmata, so your prosoma and opistosoma. We will talk about mandibles, of course, and antennae, which most other arthropods have, but these lack. Very important on your prosoma, you have a first pair of appendage, your chelicerae, used for feeding, and your second pair, of course, your pedipalps. So for your class Merostomata, so you have your horseshoe crabs, also known as your xiphosaurids. These are really neat because they almost appear as prehistoric in appearance. And notice that their prosoma, all right, has these compound eyes on your carapace and a very, very pronounced telson at the base, spike-like telson at the base of your opistosoma. On the underside of these, there are gnathobases, which are used for grinding food. They do have book gills towards the opistosoma end and just prior to the spine-like telson. The eurypterids or your sea scorpions, these, of course, are extinct. There are fossilized versions of these. And as you can see, in terms of size, they were pretty much larger than the average human being. Your pycnogonids or sea spiders, they are characterized with this blunt opistosoma, almost like a nub, and then a very pronounced prosoma. Mostly marine, these organisms can be found in very abyssal waters or deep waters. Of course, they have specialized ovisgers. These appendages used for grooming. Of course, the male ovisgers are used for carrying eggs. Class Arachnida, you have many orders in here where which we are used to. So order Arani, or your spiders, order Scorpionida, your scorpions, Sulfagida, your camel spiders, Opilionis, your harvestmen, and then your ticks and mites, Acari. More than 80,000 species in this class Arachnida. So if we think of spiders in general, for the most part, they're predators feeding on prey. Of course, most spiders can produce the web, usually 8 eyes, a very pronounced prosoma. Of course, first appendage, your chelicerae, and then your second, your pedipalps. Silk glands produce the spinnerets. Spiders, of course, they build these elaborate webs to capture prey. And here are some examples of that. Spider webs. Of course, here we know about tarantulas, as well as other spiders that hunt to catch prey. In terms of reproduction, the male pedipalps are used to wrap a sperm package, which eventually is inserted into female gonads during courtships. All right, some examples of a silk bag with eggs. All right, continuing with some more of these groups in Phylum Arthropoda, which display, of course, bilateral symmetry. These are also protostomes, which during embryonic development, the blastophore forms the mouth, and the second opening, the anus. Triploblast organisms with 3 layers of cells. Order Scorpionida, so your scorpions. Your fused segments, so you have your prosoma as well as a long opistosoma. The opistosoma carries the poison gland with the stinger. An elaborate pincers or chile. You look at scorpion morphology, very intricate. So notice your chelicerae first, pair of appendages, and then these elaborate pincer-like pedipalps. Your telson. So remember, in your horseshoe crab, you had a spine-like telson. You have a shorter version of that, but in the case of scorpions, the tip of the telson has the stinger. In terms of reproduction, a male places sperm, and then the female takes it with pedipalps. For the most part, female pretty much walks around with a sperm packet, and then eventually eggs are incubated inside the mother. Term is called viviparous, which eventually the eggs are hatched. Sulfigids are your wind spiders, and they are very notable with this large chelicerae, non-venomous as well. Harvestmen, also known as your daddy longlegs, these, of course, non-venomous as well. Very noticeable with their stilt-like legs. Order Acari with your mites and ticks. Mouth parts on capitulum, which of course, if you know ticks and mites, they pretty much are suckers. Much of the species in this group are parasitic, feeding on a host but not killing them. Right? Of course, for pets, so fleas, ticks, they can cause different types of diseases such as Lyme disease, Rocky Mountain, spotted fever. All right, so we continue with the different groups. We've talked about Glycerata. Now, the myriapods. So we know these from our centipedes and millipedes. Of course, centipedes have a pair of legs on each segment, whereas your millipedes have two pairs. Difference with these, of course, your centipedes are carnivorous, whereas your millipedes are more herbaceous. Millipedes have a specific defense gland which can secrete hydrogen cyanide, which usually deters predators from eating them. Crustacea also is a large group. They're mostly marine, but you do have freshwater and a few terrestrial. At some point in time, they also have aquatic. So these are primarily aquatic in nature. When looking at morphology, of course, you do have mouth parts with mandible and maxilla. Because they're aquatic, you do have gills as well. So when we think of crustacea, we think of lobsters, crayfish, crabs. Of course, they have specialized brooding areas where eggs are attached before release. Some microscopic forms, ancestral Nauplius, an ancestral larvae type form. We begin with class Malacostraca, so your crabs, lobsters, shrimp, crayfish. Pretty much your largest grouping or class for crustaceans, because most of these have these hard exoskeleton, usually a carapace, walking legs, pair of antennae. Most of them, of course, use swimmerets to swim. And of course, gills, since they are mostly aquatic, are present. You have different fairy shrimp, water fleas, so different orders of these. Class Branchiopoda, so these water fleas usually have philopodia or leaf-like leg structures. Different orders again, so these are mostly microscopic or macroscopic copepods, Cirripedia, Ostracoda, copepods. So as you can see, very small macro, marine. They can be freshwater, but for the most part, aquatic. Notice the copepods have a single eye. And of course, copepods are a major marine zooplankton. So many invertebrates feed on them. And therefore, a marine, very important for the marine food web. Barnacles are also in class Maxillopoda. Of course, barnacles attach to many different organisms in marine life. right? So in terms of morphology, do have reduced antennae, no circulatory system or gills. Barnacles are mostly hermaphroditic as well. Right? Continue to look at some more taxonomy. So when we look at insects or hexapoda, we usually know these with your head, thorax, and abdomen, as well as wings present. So there are different versions of these, and we'll talk specifically of the different orders. Insects as well, they are dominant arthropods. Of course, insects eat plants, animals, fungi. You can find them on terrestrial habitat, even aquatic habitat as well. Various mouth parts, as well as larval development into adults. So we do have wingless, but with incomplete metamorphosis, a metabolus. We do have another form of incomplete metamorphosis, but with wings, hemimetabolus, and of course, winged complete metamorphosis, holometabolus. And so some examples of that, uh, holometabolus, so complete metamorphosis, more than 88% of insects, so moths, butterflies, wasps, bees, ants, notice going from egg, larvae, pupa, and then forming the adult life stages. In the case for hemimetabolous development, you go through an egg, nymph, which is a miniaturized adult, and then finally into the adult stage with wings. So if we divide these up or group these, we can see that the hemimetabolous or incomplete metamorphosis includes things like mayflies, dragonflies, damselflies, termites, and even stoneflies. And if we look at holometabolous or complete winged metamorphosis, you can add your beetles, mosquito, butterflies, bees, and ants and wasps in here. So these are your different orders. If we look at diversity of mandibles, of course, they have these intricate structures depending on their food source. Wings, of course, are elaborate as well. Some insects, of course, have wings that are predominantly used and shaped for their various feeding activities. If we look at morphology, they have metaphygian tubules, which are mostly used for excretion and osmoregulation. Compound eyes with many shapes and forms. And for the most part, antennae, which are chemosensory. Tympana or eardrums. So if we look at things like katydids or crickets, we do see that as well. So very, in terms of morphology, very interesting characteristics. Trachea or spiracles, which of course opens to the outer environment. Very interesting as well. Most of these insects have aquatic life stages. For example, your mayflies, as seen here. And of course, if you're aquatic, you will have gills, and then separate sexes and various mating and internal fertilization scene. Parental care, you do see variations of that. For examples, in bees and ants, you do see that. But just going back to the various orders, so Ephemera, so your mayflies, Odonata, dragonflies and damselflies, things you see are Orthoptera, grasshoppers, crickets, Blatodi, so cockroaches, Isoteras, termites, stoneflies, Plecoptera, lice. You do have your complete metamorphosis. So these groups like your beetles, Coloptera, fleas, Siphonoptera, Diptera, your flies, mosquitoes, gnats, and then your butterflies, Lepidoptera, and finally your Hymenoptera, bees, ants, and wasps. These are just some of the orders that you will need to know as well.